Asia, the sleeping giant of gaming. What you need to know before entering and beyond.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming for this beautiful panel and our beautiful panelists. My name is Ivan Kurochkin. I'm a partner and head of the consulting department at 4H Agency. So, today actually we spoke about this mysterious sleeping iGaming giant located in Asia. Alongside with me, I would like to introduce my dearest panelists who can share today the most useful insight and basically practical thing that they are facing in terms of their work and their activities. So, first of all, I would like to introduce Keith McDonnell, director of the KMI Group. Please welcome everybody here.
Thank you, Ivan.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Also would like to introduce Lisa Fino, Senior Regulatory and Licensing Executive at the VH Partners.
Hi, good morning.
And the last but not the least panelist is Calvin Lim, founder and the Executive Chairman of EMB Mission Bound.
Thanks, Ivan. Morning, everyone.
So, I guess we can start with some basic stuff. Why is the Asia referred to this like iGaming sleeping giant? Which markets are basically waking up fast? Gents, maybe Keith, you can start with the brief introduction on this very, very broad topic.
It is a broad topic. How long have we got? Like 20 minutes?
Yeah.
I think when we talk sleeping giant, we need to be very careful because from a regulatory perspective, yes, perhaps it's a sleeping giant, but everybody here knows that Asia is far from a sleeping giant. It's a very awake giant. Business levels in a lot of countries here far exceed business in regulated jurisdictions in Europe. I think the purpose of the question is more from a regulatory perspective, and it's a slow burn. We've seen really what's happened in Southeast Asia over the last 10, 15 years is all been in the Philippines. Reincarnations of different forms of legislation with lots of rumors about where it's going to be next. And I think that's what we're talking about. So if countries can get their head around regulatory frameworks, how to govern this industry, then yes, it can explode on a white hat basis.
Thank you very much, Keith. Well, you mentioned very interesting thing related to basically regulatory stuff that is happening in the Asia. Well, we all know that in Europe, regulation is becoming harder and harder each and every year, and making operators to basically cut their margin and spending more and more time and money for this compliance. I think it would be a good question for the Lisa, as she's basically doing compliance in Europe and also in other regions. How basically, what's the difference between, Asian stuff and European? How this regulatory stuff is evolving in Asia?
So obviously, as you just mentioned, Europe is becoming more and more, but it's not restricted, but they are asking for more and more, especially when it comes to money laundering and KYC. Asia is still not adhering to such regulations and changes. However, we are seeing a shift since we are seeing a lot of Asian companies relocating to Europe and getting licenses from Europe. Now they are seeing it, the KYC are seeing it from another perspective, whereas before they were adamant to, for example, provide KYC documentation, source of wealth, statement of affairs. Now they are getting into this kind of regulations and checks. So maybe it will be now easier when the Asian markets will be regulated if they go for that strict regulator methods.
I think that actually the good example of this evolution of this regulatory changes are the situation with the Philippines that happened last year. Basically, I didn't work a lot on the Asian markets before a couple of years, but I have a very, very big client from this region, and one of the guys who was very close, I would say, to all this kind of operation, he just mentioned that because basically all this crackdown of Philippines actually creates a great work for me because a lot of Asian clients starting to look at Georgia, Tbilisi, where I'm located, and where you can obtain this kind of flexible flexible license, let me put it this way. And I got enormous amount of requests from Asian clients when this crackdown happened. And basically, the key thing that this client actually told me is that this previous regulation and previous regulator was so, how can I put it, not really corrupted, but a lot of bad things were hiding under this regime. And basically, it breaks down to this crackdown. And you have to be very, very attentive with working with the regulators if they are allowing a lot of things to be happen outside of the compliance. Apologies for taking some stage. I'm not a panelist, but I'm just a moderator here. Calvin, could you please also share some couple of thoughts on your on the insights related to this evolvement of this regulatory stuff happening in Asia?
Yeah, I think this is a million-dollar question, right? When you speak to any regulators, when you start off a conversation that's saying gaming is a privilege, not a right, that's it, right? So a privilege can be taken away from you at any point of time. So the cultural influence is also plays a huge role in terms of forming any kinds of regulation, right? When we look at the topic is sleeping giant or sleeping dragon, and what Kim mentioned about many countries in Asia are trying to regulate. But this is also similar with the rest of the world. We see North America, we see LATAM. And for Asia, it has always been the laggards when it comes to regulation or any forms of gaming innovation. But because of gaming is so ingrained in Asian culture, like for example, for the Chinese, it's mahjong. They have their own card games, Fight the Landlord. You have cockfighting, which is in the Philippines. What the regulators need to realize is that the only way forward is regulation, right?
Maybe it would be a lot to ask, but it's really interesting for me. Is it, in terms of the cultural difference, in terms of perspective of the regulation, is it connected only to iGaming, or it is just in the nature of thought of us, perception of the legislation and the regulatory stuff that is happening? So what I mean here, it's only related to gambling business, it's always was in the gray area, or it's just the matter of generally accepting to be compliant?
Well, it's generally a local culture, right? It's all generated through localization, where the game itself stems from the local culture. So cockfighting is very prevalent in the Philippines. Certain regions, certain countries in Southeast Asia, but not a lot of Western countries because it is frowned upon, right? So it has to start from there in terms of the localization, and then it becomes a market by itself. And the fact that there is a demand, obviously automatically a supply will fill in.
Yeah.
So how is the government looking at that supply, controlling that supply, right, to meet that demand? Right.
Good, thank you very much. Keith, you have some additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just, adding to the point about regulation needs to come, I agree with that, but we look at what's happened around the world, and if there's over-regulation or over-taxation or over-compliance, all that's going to do is boost the grey market, because the regulated businesses will not be able to compete with offshore businesses. So it's really important that regulators and authorities don't see it as a cash cow, and this is how they're going to tax, and this is how they're going to police and nanny state. They need to bring in something that works, is efficient, and to do that, they can look around the world at where has worked and where hasn't. The United States had an opportunity to do that before the passport repeal. They didn't really, and states were overtaxing, and they've had to pare back from that. So I think it's really important in bringing regulation that they look at the right balance to be able to control and protect people without overtaxing.
That's amazing. So I see that Liz also have a couple of things to add.
Yes, just to add with him, similar to the United States, and which are seeing in the next 5 years maybe or more, it's in Asia, it's India. India are states as well, so they are not regulated, obviously, for the time being, but esports and social gaming are very, very popular there. So we are seeing a shift. Maybe the government is looking, rumors that is looking to regulate it as a nation, because this difference in states, it's not making really sense. And from taxation purposes, it's still very, very high because they charge like 28% on the player deposits. So it's yes, but it's evolving really quickly because obviously it's a big population, and there are many young people who the mobile industry is evolving. It's very ahead of Europe and other Asian markets. So yes, maybe there will be a shift in there, but obviously not today, not tomorrow. We're seeing long term.
No, that's actually a very, very good point. Thank you very much for this. I actually just wanted to quickly comment on the key point related to the balance of the regulation in terms of the shifting between the legal market and the offshore market, because my company and myself, we were involved in, I would say, certain legalization in Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, like Uzbekistan, and those both countries are like Muslim countries, and it is quite hard to, I would say, adhere to the, I would say, cultural differences, cultural habits, as you correctly mentioned. And the key thing that basically all of these markets have enormous amount of offshore operations, like any other market, and the government just don't want to understand that they are thinking that basically if we write in the law that online casino is prohibited, so we have like prohibition on all the market. They just do not understand that there's a huge amount of offshore operations, and then basically all local payment methods can be used for depositing on this offshore casino. So basically they are stealing money from themselves and from the regulated business, and try to impose even more, I would say, restrictions on the regulated business, just leaving the offshore operations aside from the coverage. So it's kind of contrological, and we actually were doing the seminar, basically land-based seminar in Astana, Kazakhstan, for the government officials, and we were like telling them, guys, you can deposit right now, right from the stage, on the sites that are, according to your information, are explicitly banned. They're like, oh wow. So this is the key point. That's very right in terms of the balance. I really like the thought on this. So okay, moving to the next question. What would be the main hurdles for the operators who are trying to enter, well, let's say, illegal market in Asian countries? Keith, you can start. Yeah.
I think when I talk about hurdles, I look back at mistakes, and they remain hurdles. A lot of operators moving into, unfamiliar markets have put too much of a focus on product, people, payments. The tangible things that actually can be quite easily addressed through proper software choices or working with the right payment suppliers. The number one, by far, biggest hurdle is understanding the culture and building relationships with people. And not enough operators coming into new markets do that. They do their own research on product options, payment options, but they're not getting under the hood of what people in the region already know and where the real solutions are. So for me, the biggest hurdle is understanding culture, number one, and secondly, in doing that, building relationships with the right people.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. We face the same things in LATAM region when a lot of European operators were trying and still trying to enter the LATAM region, and they just do not understand. Oh, they even already obtained the license, they start operation, and then they approach us, hey guys, well, we are working for, like, for example, in Mexico for already like 2 years, but we cannot understand why our operation is lacking kind of revenue, because they are the big operator, they are working worldwide, they're working in different countries with different local licenses, but they were not understanding why they are not making revenue on these markets. And we were just doing the research, and we're like, okay guys, we see that your product is not localized. Even sometimes you are lacking local languages there. So they haven't done good their homework, and that's why they are already lacking in terms of the collecting the revenue. So yes, 100% correct. Calvin.
Yeah, I think, so put aside regulation, right? That's what Keith mentioned about entering new markets. And we have this famous gray area topic. Generally, any operator, the biggest hurdle is how big the balls they have to go into any market. The more aggressive they are, they will go to whatever markets and so forth, right? So you take into consideration, and yeah, anything else is basically the same, like the informal relationships, right? I've seen a lot of operators, specifically in the Philippines, who has license elsewhere, but they don't obtain a local PIGO license, right? And they do a lot of marketing, branding, brand ambassadors, all the top-notch, top-tier brand ambassadors, and it's definitely not cheap, right? You see their you follow their social media page, it's, I guess, live for about a couple of months, and then it fizzles out, right? So why did it fizzle out, right? Was it successful? I don't know, right? And that is to add on to the point, is what you mentioned, Keith, is more towards the localization, understand that aspect. And of course, because it is gray, so therefore the informal relationships are also very important.
Perfect. Thank you very much for this insights. Very useful. Lizzo, your thoughts on this?
Yes, I can continue on the culture thing. One not funny story, but we had a client recently based in Taiwan, like our friend Calvin. And during the KYC process, we realized that the name on the passport is different from the name on the birth certificate, but completely different, not just the removal of the middle name. And we went back to the client and we asked him, how come? And he told us, because in Taiwan, we are allowed, it's legal to change the name 3 times, but the reason behind it is because it gives you bad luck. The name is, people gives you bad luck, and we're like, because you changed your name because of bad luck?
Amazing stuff.
Yes, and okay, how are we going to explain this to the regulator? So we had to go and engage a local lawyer from Taiwan. He explained the regulations, and we supplied a legal letter. So yes, this culture thing is very big, and obviously it works vice versa. If we have a payment provider, for example, or another operator from the Western trying to enter into Asia, and finding these kind of things, he has to be, they have to be knowledgeable of each culture and of every jurisdiction in every country in Asia, because this is just in Taiwan, so I cannot, the rest of Asia, how many different cultures there are.
That's really interesting example. So kind of very usual thing for the local population in terms of changing name to their bringing the bad luck. And well, that's amazing. It is something they even cannot think around like before you start in the operation. It's so odd in terms of the you have to have a very deep understanding of the local culture and the local habits when you're entering the new market, especially in such countries like Asia and regions like Asia, or Latam. This is my pain, apologies. Yes, Keith.
Yeah, and this takes time, right? It's not about flying into one of these shows once every 6 months and then you get the culture. You gotta take time. You gotta immerse yourself in the market, or you partner with people who are already understanding of the culture and have the connections you needed. And the connections are, yes, it may be product, it may be payments, but it's probably at government level as well. It's at regulator level. These are the sort of connections on top of understanding culture that successful entrants will need.
That's actually a very good point. And actually this leads me to the thought that when you're entering remote markets like Asian region or any other region, it is, in a lot of cases, operators are trying to choose to go with the M&A opportunity to find local partner on the ground who already possess all this expertise, who already got a skin in the game by working on this market for multiple years. And so basically you rely on him in terms of his expertise to basically launch this kind of things. And this is a very, very interesting topic. And well, this is kind of actually how this can be resolved. Because in my practice, I actually faced the same situation, but it was mostly connected not with the cultural stuff, but with cultural stuff obviously as well, but with the regulatory stuff. But because like in some ex-USSR regions, the regulations are so hectic and so unpredictable, so sometimes you just need to basically trust your partner on the ground who will handle all these regulatory things. Let me put it this way. I like GR work with the government and basically to ensure that these operations will continue. And this is the only way to, basically to allow. As per my understanding, this is like the model of entering the market for a lot of big publicly listed brands in different markets. So make an M&A with some locally very recognizable player and then provide them with their expertise, technology, and experience, whatever they have, so in order to successfully launch this mutual business. Perfect. In terms of well, Asia is the big region, obviously. There are a lot of countries like Philippines, China, and other countries. Which countries you can name would be basically the next golden rush or the next opportunity for the operators? As Elisa is already ready to answer on this.
So basically, we are looking into, which are very recent, we have a new jurisdiction, Timor-Leste, which is an offshore. An offshore one, not a local. So I think it's the only one in Asia now available after the Philippines closed down the offshore license. It's very, very recent. I think they are going to launch the new regulations or the new regime at Sigma here in Asia, so it's either today or tomorrow. There are some rumors that they are going to adapt regulations similar to the MGA, which are very strict, so I don't know how this can be in such a short time and if they are ready for this. Others are saying that they are going to the framework like Curaçao was with a master license and a sub-license. But obviously we're going to have more details today or in the coming days.
Nice.
And yes, we'll see how it goes. Then we have Sri Lanka. They started, they are, yes, but they are regulated, not offshore, it's inshore. But we have to see how it goes. There is, they said they issued one, I'm not sure about it. However, we need to keep a close eye there. And Thailand in the next 6 months, because yes, they are going to pass some regulations, but then again we have to see which regulations, what requirements if you need to have any local people, any local partners, and so on and so forth.
Very good, very good. I have a couple of questions on offshore, but I would allow Keith to comment on this. Not on this, but he has other, I would say, thoughts on this side, but I will get back to this question later.
Yeah, it's just, I was asked this question 10 years ago on a panel in Macau, and nothing's really changed, apart from the fact the Philippines has reinvented itself 3 times. We had CESA, POGOs, PIGOs, and yes, there's lots of talk. There's always been talk. Publicly, we see it with Thailand. I believe there's some talks going on behind closed doors in Indonesia. I had a conversation this morning about Sri Lanka and a lot of things that are going on there for both external-facing licenses and Sri Lankan target market licenses. So there's lots of activity. I don't know how quick Thailand's going to be. We see media briefings every day, but it still could take a long time. But the only one that's only actually ever done anything, and specifically I'm talking countries in Asia rather than jurisdictions, is the Philippines, and it's done it now for a 3rd time. So I think something will happen, though. I think there's a better understanding of the taxation benefits that revenues, when done right, can bring. But again, I just make the point that they need to be careful of the dangers of over-regulating and over-taxation.
Thank you very much, Keith. Very interesting, and I totally agree with everything you said. Okay, we have a couple of minutes left, so I will ask Calvin on his thoughts on this stuff, and we will proceed to the Q&A session.
The trend is that when it comes to gaming, is that countries look at casinos or land-based first, right? Because that is supposed to promote tourism, right? That's one. But ever since COVID, the acceleration of digitalization, it seems that the government is trying to regulate both land-based and online at the same time, right? But how is that beneficial to tourism, right? So that's a $1 million question. Number 2, it's again, it's so sensitive trying to regulate, getting the government to pass gaming where it's considered a taboo in Asia, right? Where there's no very low consumer protection. It's supposed to, it's considered one of the vices, and it is generally political suicide to regulate something like this. And you mentioned a Muslim country, right? What Muslim leaders will advocate gaming, right? And what more if it's not for tourism and for local?
Let's take a quick look on the UAE that is going to legalize right now. No, it's just my commentary. Because like in UAE, you can see like this is led purely 100% Muslim country. like, and they managed to, well, to start legalization, maybe in not a really open way, in some very close behind the doors way.
But it is.
It is.
For B2Bs, it is.
It
For
is.
B2Cs, it's a bit, you have to find a partner, maybe a known partner which has land based in other, especially in the US. But yes, in my opinion, if the UAE opened, I cannot see why Asia, because UAE it was something, and apparently even Saudi Arabia is going to follow suit. So we just wait and see.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I guess we need to wrap up our discussion. I guess we can discuss more and more because this is like kind of the endless topic. Let's take a look at the question we might have. So, in terms of the specific jurisdictions, I guess we already discussed it in our discussion here. I don't know if somebody can comment in terms of the how do you overcome payment friction in countries with the limited access to traditional banking, high card decline rates. I think Keith wants to answer.
I'll take it. I mean, it's not rocket science, but crypto obviously is one option for many operators. We've seen the likes of sportsbet.io and Stake and various others doing very well in the crypto market. And then having an extensive network of payment solutions for every jurisdiction that is your target market, because it's really a game of cat and mouse. As one payment solution is closed down or there's issues with banks, you need to have a portfolio of solutions ready to kick in the next one, and probably having 3 or 4 live at the same time, so you're not reliant on one solution and you don't have all your funds tied up in one solution. So I think crypto is really interesting. It'll only get more interesting, but then having a big portfolio of fiat solutions as well for every market you're targeting.
Good stuff. Totally agree with you. In terms of the player behaviors in Asia, how is basically, is the guy is asking, or maybe lady, I don't know, differ from the other audience when it comes to retention and loyalty strategies?
I don't think there is much difference between Asia and Western Europe. It does not. It differs. Behavior just differs from one operator to another. What is more interesting, what they offer more in terms of bonuses and everything. So loyalty from players, they are not just loyal with the operator. They just go and shift wherever it's more attractive.
Thank you, Calvin.
Yeah, to add on to that, it's the localization is very important. Certain games is a must-have. Certain type of games is a must-have in certain jurisdictions, certain countries. That's what attracts players. So if your competition doesn't have that game that's very desirable, then therefore you will not be as successful as your competition.
100% agree. I would just add that maybe in terms of the Asian players, according, at least to my experience, you have to choose, adhere to the cultural peculiarities and basically to be able to provide the game that they like. This is the main, it's all come down from the culture, I would say, things. In terms of the, we have a lot of, I like the question about the cockfighting. How do you see cockfighting to be returning soon, if at all it has any more chance to come back? I don't know who is so thrilled for cockfighting coming back, but if somebody can comment, it would be good.
That's a $1 billion question.
You can have it.
It's in case everyone is not aware, but Parkour actually regulate e-sabong, I think just after COVID. And one thing as we see quite consistent, when regulation comes first, and then I guess you play a wait and see sort of approach, see what is the impact socially, culturally. I guess Parkour or the government decided that it's not worth the social and cultural impact. So therefore, they decided to, I guess, drop the whole e-sabong, right? And I know many friends who have been affected with that. Whether we'll see a version 2, maybe. Again, I'm all for a regulation, being regulated part, and just letting it not regulate, right?
Yeah.
Maybe virtual cockfighting, just cartoon cockfighting.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah. So I guess that's an RNG, right? Yeah.
No, I really like the idea of the virtual. It seems like doesn't harm anyone, and this is kind of the thing that can be easily introduced into the operations. Well, in terms of the other questions, I think that we actually don't have another time, but from my perspective, I think that in some way we already answered most of these questions. Well, obviously in not such details as it can be, but still you got the idea and the snapshot of what is actually happening there. I guess I would like to thank you, my dear panelists, the audience, for your time, and this was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. A huge round of applause for our first panel. Thank you very much.